Welcome to Mr. Marr's Guide to National 5 Modern Studies exam. In today's episode, we will discuss how you answer explain questions. There are various types of exam question which you will find when you sit National 5 Modern Studies. Some of these are knowledge and understanding, which relates to the amount of knowledge that you've learned during the course, and some of these are based on inquiry skills, which is about how you can interpret information from sources. Today's lesson is discussing explain questions which are derived from knowledge and understanding skills. Let's discuss a little bit of background information about explain questions. These will be worth 4, 6 or 8 marks, depending on their content and the type of question. The purpose of these questions is simple. It's to explain why something happened. Please be careful that when you answer this question, you don't simply describe what took place, but instead explain why it was that it actually happened. As has been noted, these questions are worth either 4, 6 or 8 marks. Let's talk about how you can get these marks. One approach is by using the P system. In this case, P stands for point. And this very simply is when you name a particular cause or action which may have led to an event taking place. If you do this correctly, you can gain 1 mark. The E in P stands for explain. This is when you actually go ahead and explain why the issue you have previously identified caused a certain event to take place. One way you might want to do this is by using the word because. Finally, the E in P stands for example. You can gain another mark if you give a real example or statistic or such like that supports the answer you've just made. If you're doing a 4-mark answer, this is one possible approach. You could give a point, which would give you a mark if you simply identify a relevant cause, and you can gain a 2nd mark if you explain why this affected a certain issue, and again remember, use the word because to do so. This would be 2 marks so far. If you repeat this twice, then you've got your 4 marks. This isn't the only approach though. Instead, you could try point, explain, example, and then identify 1 point. In a 6 marks question, again there is no one formula, but what you may wish to do is make a point, which is 1 mark, explain why this is relevant for a 2nd mark, and then give an example to support it for a 3rd mark. Again, if you repeat this, then that will give you your 6 marks overall. But again, you might instead do point, explain, example, and point. As long as you make 6 relevant points, you will get your 6 relevant marks. And finally, in an 8-mark question, the approach may well be the same. Point, explain, and example can give you 3 marks. And if you repeat this 3 times, then this will give you, in fact, 9 points, but of course 8 marks is all that's available. In terms of structuring your answer, this is how you may well wish to do it. The simple rule is this: the number of marks the answer is worth is the number of sentences that you should write. So, in an 8-mark answer, you could do the following: point, explain example, point, explain. This equals 8 marks. However, an equally acceptable approach would be this: point, explain example, point, point. Again, this gives us our 8 marks. Remember, 8 marks equals 8 sentences, 6 marks is 6 sentences, and 4 marks is 4 sentences, and this can allow you to get the maximum marks available. Let's look at an example question which is drawn from the crime topic. In this case, we will explain why some people commit crimes. Remember, when you answer these questions, it's important that you actually explain why the issues you identify are relevant. And remember, 6 marks, you may wish to write 2 P paragraphs, which would give you your marks. We start off with our point, and we simply identify a reason, which in this case is that of peer pressure, and we would gain a mark for this. To gain a 2nd mark, we have to explain what peer pressure is and why it might have caused people to commit crime. In this case, we flag up the issue that peer pressure causes people to commit crimes because they don't want to feel left out if their friends do it. This explanation gives us our 2nd mark. Finally, we give an example for a 3rd mark. In this case, we flag up an example of a real crime which many young people commit and which is directly related to peer pressure. Point, explain, example, and so far we have 3 marks. Here's the overall example. Remember, point gives us 1 mark, an explanation of why this is relevant gives us a 2nd mark, and finally our example gives us a 3rd mark. Remember, 1 mark equals 1 sentence. 4 mark question, I should see 4 sentences. 6 mark question, 6 sentences. And finally 8 marks, 8 sentences. National 5 Modern Studies exam. How to answer explain questions. It's really that simple.